Justus, we back, sir.
Well, welcome. It's an exciting day. America's changing.
Right before our eyes, right?
Thank God. It just goes to show the perfection, that life is perfect, because this could have worked out differently. Mm-hmm. I mean, those things that we saw as perfection, the police response, not being prepared. Mm-hmm. Just think for a moment what would have happened if they were prepared. Mm-hmm. That the veil would not have been, the veil would have been remained up for lots of folk.
So do you really believe they were not prepared?
Whether it was on purpose or not on purpose, they weren't prepared. Unfortunately, some folk got hurt. But I truly believe that life is perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect. Now, I'm not saying at all it's perfect for me or you.
Right.
Certainly wasn't perfect for those folk that died, or the policeman who lost his eye.
Right.
That it wasn't perfect for them in respect to something terrible happened to them. Mm-hmm. But life is perfect for life in the sense that things play out, and sometimes they play out just in time. Mm-hmm. Because just think, literally, millions of people saw this administration for what some got to see on that day. Mm-hmm. Millions of people saw this before Trump became president. Literally millions of people. Lots of people who I remember, I personally remember saying, he's going to get impeached. He's going to violate. It's obvious. It's obvious. And some didn't see it at all. Mm-hmm. See, facts just don't matter at all to some people. Mm-hmm. They just don't matter. In fact, I may have spoken on it last time, but I'll reiterate the point, because I think it is just so important that this notion of I feel like this, people say that all the time now. And I remember I never heard the phrase before. I remember I had never heard anyone ever say, I feel like.
Even though you were not hearing that phrase, were you still seeing the same type of actions of someone who would say that?
I didn't notice it. I didn't notice it back then. But what I'm saying is that most of my life, when someone says they feel like, they would be referring to their feelings.
Right.
They would never say, I feel like, when referring to what they think.
Right.
I believe that very often when folk say, I feel like, that is actually what they mean. And it suggests something that isn't really valid in my opinion. That is that one may look to their feelings to draw conclusions about facts. I feel like he's dishonest. I feel like he's honest. I feel like they're a good person. I feel like they're not. Well, there are facts that will lead you to draw a conclusion, but those facts have to be thought about, considered. Right. Once you consider the facts, you draw a conclusion.
Right.
Has nothing to do with your feelings. They literally have not one thing to do with your feelings.
But we tend to combine them.
What happens is I believe, is that when somebody goes to their gut, then they look to what confirms their gut. Confirmation bias. You get a gut feeling about something. I feel like he's dishonest. Then you look for something dishonest to
attach that
to confirm your bias.
Right.
You already believed it, so you see what you saw.
Right.
On the other side, is that sometimes if you approach a situation, you have no desire to believe one thing or the other. You're just listening. You just listen. You just see.
Right.
You add the facts together. You draw a conclusion.
Right.
But other times you may say, well, I have a feeling about it. Mm-hmm. I want to believe something. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you look to those facts that support your conclusions.
Let me ask for an example. So if I say, it's a fact that I need to go to school because I want to be a such and such a teacher. So a requirement for teaching is going to school. Are you saying that it's a fact that I have to go to school, and then I feel like I'll have a better time at Georgetown than I would Maryland? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying, right, those are two different things. Two things. You said if you want to be a pharmacist,
yep.
Fact, you have to go to pharmacy school.
Sir.
There's just no way to become a pharmacist without getting the education.
It is a fact.
In order to get the certification to be a pharmacist. That's just a fact. I feel like Georgetown is a better school. That implies to me that you don't have any facts to support your conclusion. It implies that to me. It doesn't mean that, but it implies that because I would think anyway, if you had facts to support the conclusion, you may have offered the fact. For example, I've had two cousins to go to Georgetown. They've told me they had a ball while they were there. Okay, those facts lead me to the conclusions that if I go to Georgetown, I'll have a great time while I'm in school.
Right.
Those facts, right? That information.
So it's still facts.
They're still facts.
Gotcha.
Or information, factual information, okay? Or things that you believe. But to just say, I feel like, all right, here's another example. I actually heard, I think it's essential that when you're considering other human beings, that you listen to the words that come out of their mouths.
Right.
And I think it's essential for other human beings for them to understand what you're saying is to listen to the words that come out of your mouth.
Right.
The problem is often folk will say, I feel like you meant something you did not say. So words are tools for communication, clearly.
Right.
It's a participatory process where the person who's speaking is trying to convey a message. The person who is listening has to be open to listening to what the person says, interpreting those words, and gaining the meaning, obtaining the meaning, receiving the message that the person is trying to send.
Right.
If I were to say, your husband said, you're fat. And I say, men are visual. You may discern that I am saying that you deserve to have been called fat. When actually, if I had meant that, I would have said, you deserve to be called fat.
You would have said that exactly.
I would have said exactly what I meant.
Yes.
And the person who's listening has a right to expect me to say what I mean.
Yes.
And I have a right to expect that the person who is listening will listen to the words that I say for the ordinary meaning of the words that I said, and not to change the meaning of the words that I gave them,
right,
and then hold me responsible for their misunderstanding.
For what they misunderstood. I get that.
Do you
totally understand that. Well, but it also, you have to put in the factor that the person that you're speaking with must know that they really could believe that when they say I feel, it doesn't, it's like saying scared and frightened are two different words for a reason. Mm-hmm. You have to know that kind of information in order to say I believe, I think, and not say I feel.
Exactly.
Do you think that is clear to most people that you come across, I guess?
Honestly, I don't know, but I doubt it. Very often I hear people holding others responsible for their interpretation of the words that the speaker spoke. I think it's fair for others to hold speakers responsible for the words that exit their mouths, for the ordinary meaning of those words, whether they're in, local parlance or however the person is speaking. But in context, those words should be considered in context for their meaning. But I think what happens often is that people decide to attribute meaning to words that don't fit the meaning of the words. I know because I've been a salesman and I've witnessed salespeople purposely speak in vague terms,
kind of distorted to
in vague terms for the purpose of having their listener jump to a conclusion. For the purpose of having them jump to expecting them to fill in the blanks.
Yes.
I think it should be taught in school, and perhaps to some degree it is that we all need to learn to listen and not to presume that folk mean something that they did not say. So,
but also something that they may have said or led you to believe. In the sense, if you're watching a commercial, 9 times out of 10 for a medicine or something, there's a little small print at the very bottom. So they're telling you something in the big print above, but then they're like not really
disclaiming
at the bottom.
it at the bottom.
You see what I'm saying?
I didn't say this, I didn't say that, I didn't say that
exactly.
at the bottom.
You know, I've seen it where a car, a new car comes out and it goes through the water. At the very bottom of the commercial, it says, "Do not drive your car in the water."
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And to me, that just explains to me that people really do not understand when speaking and or when listening. Sometimes,
and I think that it's unfortunate, but humans are predictable, very predictable, very much so predictable. So I know, and lots of folk that let's just face it, there's nothing that I know that millions of others don't know. Okay, millions of others know exactly the same things that I know, and so, but some don't know. So, for example, you may have an insurance policy, and your policy says, for example, that you have water backup coverage. The coverage is called water backup from sewers or drains. That's what the coverage is called.
Okay.
But in the policy, it says it won't cover water that comes out of your drain. We can expect folk to not read the terms of the policy because we know that humans don't read contracts. Right.
That's just what it is. Exactly.
We know that.
Yes.
So if anybody who's been in the business who has to have people sign contract know that what typically happens is a person that hands you the contract explains to you what the contract says and tells you to sign.
Very much so.
We know that happens. Okay. And then if that goes to court, the judge will hold you responsible for what's in the contract.
Yes.
In fact, there's verbiage in the contract that says, I agree that I have read the terms of the agreement.
Yes.
Now, when you get in the court, you can't say that you didn't read it because you signed saying you read it. That you did, but you didn't. Okay. But the fact is that when it was written, everyone knew you weren't going to read it. And in fact, the reason why they wrote so many words and used those words in the contract, used legalese in the contract, is so you wouldn't read it. Now, here's the thing. We know because we're not crazy that there are no words that are written in legalese that couldn't be written in plain English. So we know that human beings, we citizens don't benefit from legalese at all. Legalese has no positive purpose for the community. It has none. There's no use for it really except to confuse people. That is the purpose of it. It is to confuse folk. Right? To write things over their heads, to know they don't understand it, and then hold them responsible for it. It's on purpose.
Yes.
It's not a mistake, right?
I hope y'all caught that out there. Right. I hope y'all caught that. That's real right there. I hope y'all caught that.
So the reality is that the judge knows it, both lawyers know it.
Yes.
Everybody around it knows it, but everybody pretends not to know what everyone knows. Right. So, all right. So that's a little bit off the subject, but the issue that I wanted to address with respect to is communication. That the standard, I think, a fair standard that would help this country, help individual relationships is that I should be held responsible for what I say. I am not responsible for what you think I meant if I didn't say it.
Exactly.
Okay, if I didn't say those words,
Right.
then I'm not responsible for what you think I meant.
Right.
Okay, because you could ask me,
what did you mean?
Did you mean
yes.
that?
Yes.
And if I say yes, then that is what I meant. But if I said no, that is not what I meant. Okay?
That makes sense to me.
It so frustrates me when I listen to people being interviewed in the news and I hear people ducking questions and talking around things that those questions don't get peeled back.
But isn't that the same way of just like a verbal contract in a sense? We already know you're going to dodge. It's like how they write contracts. We already know you're not going to read this. The same way when I ask you a question on CNN and it's somebody else from whomever. Right. It's like they're there to dodge.
They're going to dodge.
It's not for them to answer the question.
That very much frustrates me that the person allows them to get away.
You see what I'm saying? It's like that's the whole purpose of getting on there is to dodge.
It so frustrates me that they don't come back with this. So are you saying that we're going to pretend, you and I are going to sit here and pretend like you answered my question? Right? That's what the response I want to hear.
Right.
Right? Or are you telling me you really can't see the difference between those two? Because if you can't, that tells me something. I need to understand that you can't tell there's a difference between what you said and what you expect that I think you meant.
Yes.
Right? So I want to know, do you think I'm crazy or are you crazy? Or what's going on here?
Right.
I want to hear someone push that back, because there are those who are listening who can actually hear that nuance, hear this person pretending to have answered the question, but there's those who can't, literally cannot, and they vote too. Yes. They are in this too. It's so frustrating to me. For example, you know, I don't really want to get into politics, but I'm actually hurt by. Particularly, I saw this young man and young woman, both young enough to be my kids. Both happen to be white young people, both younger than my kids or my kids' ages. This young man was being interviewed. The reporter asked this young man, "What happened? What is that on your hand?" And he said, "It's the lady's blood." She said, "Whose blood?" He said, "I don't know the lady, but we were storming the Capitol and they shot her." She says, "Well, what is your name?" He says his name. "Where are you from?" "I'm from New Jersey." And he says, "People have to know about this. Everybody has to know what happened here today." This young man actually did not understand that he committed a criminal act. He didn't understand that. He didn't understand that when he said, "I stormed the Capitol," he didn't understand that that's a crime. And that what everybody needs to know is that what he did was a crime. He thinks that it's unreasonable for this woman to have been shot
storming the Capitol.
Now, how could he have come to that conclusion? And if he can't see that that's wrong, then no one is supposed to be talking to this young man without somebody protecting him from the speaker. Okay, this young man is not capable of thinking yet. He's not ready yet. No one should be addressing him, offering him any type of information because he can't check the information. He's not ready yet. Okay, no one's supposed to be seeking out. There's no difference from what happened to that young man, or little difference, in my opinion, to what happened with that young man, than some pimp waiting at the bus stop for a 15-year-old to get off the bus to convince this 15-year-old that something makes sense that makes no sense.
So you don't think it's not that person's parents? You think? I mean, you know, it starts somewhere. Usually in the home.
But what did not need to happen? What wasn't necessary was for someone to misinform that boy. No one needed to. There was no need. And I mean the ordinary definition of need. There was no need for someone to misdirect, miseducate, misinform this young man so that he did something that was going to negatively affect his future for nothing at all.
So, but what do you think is happening to all of these people?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. What frustrates me is that folk can't tell they're being targeted, that they're being targeted to be misinformed. Right? See, here's the thing. Nobody's targeting me. When somebody says something absurd about something, they're not talking to me. I'm not their audience, okay? Because I'm going to question, okay? I'm going to fact check them. So I'm not being targeted. They don't even want to talk to me.
Is this only in a political sense? I'm asking this because
in every sense.
So if you see a car commercial that you like, and that made you say, I want that car.
Yeah.
You're not being targeted?
I'm not being targeted because nobody who is informed is ever being targeted to be misinformed. You just happen to be there. You're going to hear it, but you're not going to believe it. Let me put it to you this way. Okay, here's an example. Every other month, I hear someone say this. That in the 3/5 compromise, someone decided, or government decided, that blacks were 3/5 of a person. Actually, that's not true. That never, ever happened. It just didn't happen. People say that it happened all the time, but if people would just listen, pay attention, they'll see that that is not what they read in the book. In that compromise, they said those folks will be counted as 3/5 of a person for the purpose of the census, so that the person who owned them would have effectively more votes. So the person who owned them would have more votes. It didn't inure the individual black person
for them.
of any percentage of personhood, because they were still not citizens,
right?
Okay,
right.
They still had no rights, no privileges, no nothing.
Right.
So they weren't counted as 3/5 anything.
Right.
Right. That's just not true. It never happened. What I'm saying is that when people repeat that, they're not talking to me because I listen.
I got you.
Right. They're talking to folk now. Assuming they know what they're talking about, but the ones who are looking to misinform, they know it. But they understand there's no point in educating folk or informing them of anything. What they do is repeat back to them the nonsense that they already believe.
Right.
So, for example, Candace Owens. Candace Owens repeats white supremacy and black inferiority to a community of people who have been taught the same thing that she does.
Right.
The same thing she was taught. She repeats it and uses what she considers license and other people consider license as her blackness to repeat the same nonsense that we all have been taught. Yeah. Here's an example. She says, our community has these issues. We have been taught what will follow that sentence when she speaks it is the same thing we have been told all of our lives.
Exactly.
Those things that she's about to say are things I remember people were saying before she was born. Exact same words.
Just a new person.
But she says it, and someone looks at it as some profound truth. It is sustained by the listener because it reinforces what they were already told.
But it also believes that like you said, she's black, she's younger. Those factors play a big part in that as well. And the fact that if it was an older person saying that, it wouldn't have as much as effect as it did if it was a younger black woman of the community.
I get that.
You know what I'm saying? It's not even really like you said. She's just repeating what's always been said.
She's repeating it. But what I'm saying is that what I like to see is people to question it, because the premise, question the premise. dismantle the premise, dismantle the conversation. First of all, I have never, ever heard her debating anyone where she didn't state things that were not true as if they were, and use those to form the basis of her argument. Okay, so what she does is, what I've always seen her do is that she'll say 10 things in rapid fire, 10 statements in rapid fire, as if they're facts when they are not factual, they're not even true. And she never ever concedes a point.
But see, but
So,
that's. I'm sorry.
Let me finish.
Forgive me.
So what I'm saying is, this is what I'm talking about, how you dismantle that nonsense, is that you don't let them. It's the same way when you're interviewing someone. What I hope they started to do in the news, don't let them get off that point.
So it's really the presenter or the
not the presenter. I'm talking about every individual, and I don't mean just the presenter, but what I like to see is every individual listener to decide that they're not going to accept the notion unless the person defends the basis of the argument. For example, you listen to Candace, she'll say, every time Black Lives Matter does something, there's violence. Every time Black Lives Matter. Challenge that notion. Is that true? Because there's some fair presumptions. Every time Black Lives Matter does something, clearly she's holding them responsible for whatever happens when they have a march. So question it. Is it true that every time they've had a march, there was violence? Is that true or isn't it? Because there is a fact. I don't know whether it's true or not, but if it's true, she has a point. If it's not true, she does not have a point. Okay? The next thing is this. Ask the question, are you saying that when Black Lives Matter have a march, they are responsible for, the leaders of Black Lives Matter are responsible for what happens even if one of their members didn't do it? Are you saying that? Make that point clear.
So you got to say that your problem is more or less with, you don't have a problem with the Candace Owens more or less than you have with the host of the show, the Don Lemon, the Chris Cuomo.
I have
just based on what you said, it's more the problem of how the Candace Owens is dealt with during these times where they're speaking to people who are not ready to be spoken to.
I have a problem with the greater audience.
Okay.
I have a problem with the any greater audience that accepts her conclusions. This is the reason why. Let me peel back that a little bit.
Okay.
The reason why I have an issue with that is because when I listen to her, it's obvious nonsense. Clearly nonsense. Clearly. Because if it were that you could just take her writings, take her words, and just dissect them, check them for facts, very little of what she says is true. Her bases are typically false. Her bases are false premises that have been fed to all of us. Here's an example. There's this notion that she presents consistently that Black people are inferior and white people are superior. Now she says that that's not what she's doing, but it is what she's doing. Because first of all, you start with the premise that we are a different kind of human. She starts with that. All racism starts there, with the premise that Blacks are a different kind of human. Okay?
Right.
Because here's the notion. What's wrong with Blacks?
Right.
If there's something wrong with Blacks, just Blacks, if it's just Blacks, then clearly
they're different.
They're different kind of human.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So now if you say, what is the human condition? Right? Are Black humans different than white humans? Fundamentally, her basis is that Black humans are different than white humans.
Right.
And inferior. Why? Because absolute proof of that is that she's always pointing to how Black people got problems, and she never talks about white people's problems.
Yes.
Except the fact that some white people care about Black people's problems. Okay, so this other kind of person has a heart for these other kind of people, and that's their problem because those people have a problem because these people keep pandering to those people's problems. Okay, see, the notion is nonsensical that Blacks are a different kind of human because we're not. We're just human. We are no better, no worse. Right? We Black people, for other people's reasons, the notion of blackness or black group or black community was created for a reason. It was accepted by the populace, including by black folk, that we're a different kind of people, and then there's white people and Puerto Rican people and these different kinds of people. But let's just face it, they could have separated people by eye color, and it's just true. Could have done it the same way. They could have said people with blonde hair, people with blue eyes, as opposed to people with brown eyes, but they chose skin color. So okay, that's what they chose. But the notion that we're a different kind of people, that we act differently, is nonsensical.
So let me. The people who stormed the Capitol, do you take that as the first time that showed? Because like we always, and I'm glad you did not even bring this up actually and allowed me to, how people are saying if black people would have ran into the Capitol, it would have been a different story. Do you think, do you think that is the case? Does that show that white people will protest and do something? Black people will protest and do something?
Here's the thing. As I said, right, we got to start from the beginning because we can never forget this part.
Okay.
We all of us were trained to believe in white superiority and black inferiority. All of us, including black folk, was trained on that. All of us were. Okay. So yes, without a doubt, black humans in this country have always been treated differently than white humans. But what we saw that day was not white behavior. It just was not. It was bad behavior. It was bad behavior. All behavior is human behavior.
So what I'm saying is them storming the Capitol show that it's bad. Just bad behavior.
Just bad behavior. That's not white behavior.
That proves that Candace is wrong by saying black people are different than white people and things like that.
No, I don't think that is proof that it's wrong. It's proof, it's evidence that humans respond based on their perceptions of things, based on their realities, how they see things. Right. Those humans who stormed the Capitol that day were convinced that they were in danger in the sense, I don't mean danger to their physical beings. Right. They're in danger of losing something, although specifically what that is or was never even presented to them in no way that I could hear. For example, what I heard was, okay, so let's talk about that for a moment.
Let's talk about it.
So freedom, for example. I heard someone say freedom, and I heard someone say, you're going to lose this country. Okay, now let's peel back that onion. Lose has a definition. The country in context means something. Lose the country. Do you mean that I won't be able to find it? No, that's not what you mean. You don't mean that. Okay?
You don't mean that.
You don't mean that.
Right.
You mean this country will be gone? Now, meaning that it will not be what it is today. Okay, if that's what you mean, specifically, what about this country will change? Specifically, what are you talking about? This is what I'm talking about, salesmanship, about how people get conned. Because if it is that there is no white privilege, what specifically are you talking about that you're going to lose? Specifically, what are you going to lose? Okay, now if it is that you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, that you've done what you did because you worked hard and all that stuff, is anyone telling you that you're going to be able to, that if you work hard and you do the right things, that the opportunity won't be available to you anymore if Biden became president? Do you really believe that? What evidence is there of that at all? In fact, actually, there's none. In fact, throughout history, just the facts, that there's been no depressions that come about when liberals were in office. Not one. Not a single one. No, not a depression, not a near depression.
But see, this is a little further. Radical is the word they used.
Okay, that's another thing too. What does that mean?
Talk about that.
What does that mean? What does radical mean?
Radical left is how they put it, like something like
left.
that.
Okay, so this is what I'm talking about when you're talking to people who have nothing in their heads. When they have nothing in their heads. They say radical, specifically, what does that mean? When someone says that to a person, they're actually saying, I know you're an idiot. I am sure that you are. I am positive. Because see, I can say radical to 10,000 of you.
Yes.
And each one of you thinks that radical means something a little different.
Yes.
So when I say radical, right, then I can put all of you to sleep.
Yes.
Because I am sure that you're a moron.
Yeah.
Okay? I am sure that you're a moron. See, you should be insulted when someone says the radical left. You should be insulted because you can be sure they think you're an idiot. Okay? And when you respond to that, you actually prove that you probably are, because they didn't make themselves clear. Like big government, how many people work there?
Right.
Small government, how many people work there? And then when you talk about government, you say, I am for the police. Isn't that government? But you weren't talking about that. What are you talking about? And this is what I'm talking about when you peel back the onion and make them speak in specifics. They can't speak in specifics because they don't actually have a case.
So let me ask you this. Kind of back to the point I was making. It seems as if we can't stop them from doing that. So it needs to be some type of safeguard in between. And I've seen news channels do fact checks and everything. It just seems like there is no answer for that.
There is an answer. There is an answer.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about the answer.
Let's talk about that.
Very simple answer is this. Any organization that holds themselves out to be a truth-telling organization, news organizations, for example, if you are a news organization or any organization that holds yourself out to offer facts, I don't mean opinions, facts.
Right.
Or you are a public official who is running for office or holding office or represents someone who holds office or any other public official, it should be a felony criminal offense for you to ever lie, to say anything that's not true. You may offer your opinion as your opinion by starting it out this way, in my opinion. But to say...
Is that enough? Just putting that in front of it. That's enough for you?
Yes.
So Twitter and Trump, how he tweets everything. As long as he put just...
In my opinion,
you're fine.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And the reason why is this. It's because it's not an emphatic statement. You're putting the listener on notice that this is just something that you think. I believe. I think. It's something else to say. It's emphatic. When you say things emphatically, you're saying it as if you know that it's true.
Yes.
You're saying that I know that it happens. Now, I listen to Trump. I listen to every word he says because I can listen. I have that skill. Many people have that skill. Trump actually said that what he said was based on rumors. He actually said that. But that doesn't confirm the bias. He said, I won the election. How do I know? Because I had bigger rallies. He said that. Trump said that out of his mouth.
Right.
I had bigger rallies by the rally count. He said they couldn't get 20 people at their rallies.
Right.
Look at my rallies. How could I have lost?
Right.
If you're listening to that, he gave his basis. His basis was the rallies. His basis was not what happened in the election. He said, I am told, people tell me, and I believe them. That's the basis of his argument. But here's the thing.
I'm sorry.
Is that when he says that, unless he knows it to be true from the people who, if it was data, because you know that there was an audit of the elections.
Yes.
They counted, they looked at the ballots, they checked the ballots against the computer, what was in the computer. They reconciled it.
Yes.
Now, if that reconciliation revealed something, he could say factually that something was wrong.
For sure.
But to say that this guy over here says that something went wrong and say that he knows wrong because that guy said so, guess what? He could say this. That guy said so, and I believe him. That's fair. It's not fair for him to say that nothing happened, that something happened when he doesn't know that something happened.
So are you saying that if he put, in my opinion, what happened at the Capitol would not have happened? Are you saying it's that simple? Like that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm very confident that if people who are leaders don't speak emphatically, their followers will hear the uncertainty in what they say.
I heard someone say that Donald Trump is not a well man. He has some mental problems. So what do you say to people like Ted Cruz and people like that supported this notion that more than likely Trump been a politician for 4 years. Ted Cruz and everybody else who was supporting him have been doing this, and they supported that. So what do you say for them in a sense? Like, you know...
I mean, listen, I think that...
People are going to believe them too, being that they've been doing this.
But that's for confirmation bias. See, I truly believe that there's nothing or very little that I know, if anything, Ted Cruz doesn't know. And I think that Ted Cruz is not stupid. I think that Ted Cruz understands.
Yes, I agree.
I think he understands. You know, Wallace said that, and I believe it was in his autobiography, George Wallace, he said that the first time he ran for office, he tried to run it with some integrity, but he got out niggered. He said he would never get out niggered again. He understood that he had to say nigga, 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 and nigga, nigga, right, in order to win.
Play to the base, basically.
He had to play to the base.
Yes, sir.
Right, that was just necessary for him to win. He understood that his base were not thinkers. They would not think, and many of them would rather die than think. It's just they were not going to think.
So all he had to do was...
If he wanted to hold office, he needed to say what they wanted to hear. He had to confirm their biases. And if he did not confirm those biases, he was not going to hold office. Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, and a lot of the other guys, that is just obviously who they are and how they see the world. They will say anything and do anything to hold power. Anything. They have no apparent allegiance, and this is my opinion, but I think I'm right about it. They don't have any allegiance to anyone, to anything except themselves and to hold office.
To whom power, basically. They hold allegiance to power.
That's just it.
Authority.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. And that's the way I see it. And I think that their story reveals that to just be true. I mean, here's an example. Ted Cruz was not born in this country. When Obama...
All over him.
He was all over Obama, saying he could not be president because he claimed Obama wasn't born in the country.
Right.
Ted Cruz actually wasn't born in this country, but it was time for him to run. All of a sudden, he understood the Constitution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crazy, right?
Crazy. So if he actually ever believed it, then I don't think he would have run. But it's clear to me that he never believed in the first place.
In the beginning.
Trump started out his presidential campaigns before he actually said he's going to run for president by claiming that Obama wasn't born in the United States, which means that he understood that he had to appeal to the racists.
Yes.
He had to appeal to people that he believes are idiots. He thinks they're stupid. He thinks they're peasants. Ronald Reagan did the same thing because they just accept it as a fact that they have to pull in the people who will not think or cannot think to support the notions. Here's a fact I truly believe. I don't believe that a conservative could ever gain office or ever hold office
without lying.
Outlaw the lie. They will never hold. They will never sustain or maintain any office absent a lie. The lie is the basis of their entire being. So, and it doesn't benefit the people. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, it does definitely.
It just doesn't benefit. It doesn't benefit their constituents. It doesn't benefit anyone because they have to create a false narrative. In fact, even if you look at these never Trumpers, these guys.
What is a never Trumper? I'm sorry.
These Republicans who said at some point, either in the beginning or in the middle or at the end, said that they would never support Trump. Let's just face it. It's clear that they have some integrity because at some point they said, okay, this has gone too far. I'm not going to take it to the next level. But
before or after storming the Capitol?
No, before storming the Capitol. Some got off the train with Trump from the beginning. They said, I'll never support him from the time that he ran.
I got you.
But when Reagan And Bush didn't take it to that extreme, but their premises, their bases, their biases, they were based on racism too.
So you're saying the Republican type of voters that voted for the Ted Cruz's, the Mitt Romneys, Bushes, whatever, are the same people that voted for Trump, or this is a whole different group?
No, they are clearly the same people. Okay. I mean, not all the same people.
Of course.
What I'm saying is this: 76 million people voted for
that man. Yes, they did.
Voted for that man. What I'm saying is this: is that if that is, from what I understand, that's somewhere around 95% of the Republicans in the country. So if 5% jumped off the train, there's no reason, there's no rational way you could look at that and decide that and determine that out of 100%, the 95% didn't represent the mindset of the party, that the 5% was the mindset of the party, right? It was the 95%.
Yes.
So that 95% who supported Trump also supported Reagan. Also supported Bush.
They're in there.
They did. They're in there.
Yeah.
They're the same people, right? They're the same people. So the notion that that's not my Republican Party, but those are the same people. But let me back up on the notion about Democrat and Republican. The notion Democrat is a political party. Republican is a political party. Neither of them require you to affirm any particular perspective when you join. None of them ask you, how do you see any particular view?
Right.
Okay? Political parties are political parties, but they are not political philosophies. They are just not. They're not.
But there are, I believe, expectations.
Okay. However, they're not political parties. Here's a fact. Liberal and conservative are perspectives. They are perspectives. They're not parties. Party does not identify your perspective. Conservative does. Liberal does. Go back in history, you'll see that when the Democrats, by the majority, people by conservatives, they were the party of segregation, of black codes, of the Confederacy, of the KKK.
This is Democrats, right?
Democrats.
Yes.
The Democratic Party is where conservatives met in the majority for about 100 years.
So, but anyone probably now though is probably liberal is probably a synonym for Democrat, and conservative is probably a synonym for Republican.
No, it's
it
not.
may not be.
No,
but that's the like.
Remember we talked about language. No, that's a shortcut, but the shortcut is confusing. Here's a fact. Listen. Tucker Carlson is a Democrat. Tucker Carlson from Fox News is a Democrat. Most of the conservatives in West Virginia are Democrats. Democrat is not short for liberal. It just is not. Republican is not short for conservatives. Now, it is true. At the same time, it is true that the majority of the people in the Democratic Party are liberals. The majority of the people in the Republican Party are conservatives. But Republican does not mean conservative, and Democrat does not mean liberal. It just does not.
I'm not saying you're not correct. That's a fact. Right. But how is it being played is really like where we need to deal with the reality of it. Okay. It's being played as if it is. Do you agree with that?
I agree. And that's the reason why I want to clarify it, because I think too often people can't tell that there's a huge difference. Listen, there's just a fact that guy who drugged that Confederate flag in the Capitol the other day, he may very well be a Democrat. Very well be a Democrat. But one thing for sure, he is conservative. If you want to identify where a man stands, look to liberal or conservative. Don't look to their party.
Right.
Look to their stance. look to their stance.
Just for the new listeners, though, I believe it's important that even though you are right, that's how it started. People are going to wonder, like, well, why am I looking at Democrats saying this now and saying we still have to respect it, though?
No, you can't respect it. It's more.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I do get what you're saying. I do get. So let me reiterate this. The reason why it's so important for you to see it is because you got to see the field. You got to see the forest and the trees. If someone believes. When people say, but I don't see any difference between the Democrats and Republicans, the reason why you don't see the difference and you don't see it now and you can't see it in history is you don't know where to look. I'm telling you where to look.
Right.
Look to see if they're liberal or conservative.
Right.
If you look, so the way they fool a lot of, especially young people who just get involved with politics or trying to understand politics, people will say, hey, all the Confederates, they were all Democrats. The people who wanted to keep you guys slaves, they were all Democrats. Yes, they were all from the South. Well, not all. They weren't all from the South. They were in the majority from the South. All of the South was then, all of it was conservative. Mm-hmm. Every single state was conservative. Mm-hmm. Every single Confederate state was also run by Democrats. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them. Every single one of those states today, save Maryland, is still conservative, and they are all run by Republicans. Right. The GOP, the Grand Old Party, used to be Democrats. The GOP is now Republicans. Right. The Grand Old Party is conservatives. Right. Do you see them? But if you don't understand the history, you can't follow the link. You don't understand what you're looking at. Right. You don't get. Listen. Here's another thing. Let me make a point like this. Affirmative action, the Civil Rights Act, the Voters' Rights Act. People will say Johnson and the Democrats passed the Civil Rights Act. Partly true, not totally true. Fact is that both Republicans and Democrats, mm-hmm. liberals, mm-hmm. and both parties mm-hmm. supported the notion. When they talked about bipartisanship, mm-hmm. what they were saying is the liberals in the Democratic Party mm-hmm. and the liberals in the Republican Party mm-hmm. came together to mm-hmm. support a notion. Mm-hmm. They did it together. But when people talk about it, they'll say the Democrats did it. Then when you talk about affirmative action, they'll say Republicans did it. That's not what happened. Right. The liberals in one party mm-hmm. and the liberals in the other party came together mm-hmm. to bring about justice. Mm-hmm. Conservatives have always opposed justice. Right. Justice for women, mm-hmm. justice for minorities, justice for anybody except mm-hmm. white men. Conservatives have always done it. I challenge anyone to show an example of a single instance mm-hmm. when the majority of conservatives ever supported anything towards justice. Yeah. I say that not once ever in the history of this country or any other country have they ever supported justice. Not even back, think about it. When George Washington was, for his day, with respect to liberty for mm-hmm. white men, he was a liberal. Mm-hmm. King George was the conservative. Mm-hmm. Right? That's just a fact, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so these notions of liberty and the republic and all those things, those were liberal notions, right? Now, don't get me wrong. They certainly never intended on passing it on to their slaves, but for themselves, those were liberal notions. That was, and the support for the monarch, that was the conservative notion. Mm-hmm. All the growth, all of the good things, bar nothing, mm-hmm. all of the things that we hold dear and hold high as great human traits, they were all brought about by liberals of their day. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't mean people who were necessarily totally liberal, because the story of Lincoln, for example, the notion that Lincoln thought that blacks were his equals is nonsense. He didn't. However, Lincoln certainly opposed slavery, and he certainly put it into slavery on purpose, mm-hmm. because if he didn't intend for it to end, it may still be on today. Sorry. That's just a fact. And what supports that fact is this: the 13th Amendment, which is the amendment, there was the Constitution guaranteed property rights. One of the particular reasons it guaranteed property rights had to do with slavery, so that those plutocrats who were the minor kings. Now you gotta understand, the people who represented those states were sort of like the owners of the states, right? I mean, think back for a moment. Right? They were the guys, the plantation owners. They were the rich guys, right? That's who was around that table, right? The governors and all that. That was a small community of people who were essentially the prince and the king of their little areas, the Lees and the Virginia and all that. That's who they were. That's who they were. So when they came together to form a country, they were giving up a little of their power, but they wanted to be the king of Virginia in these states. But in order to maintain their sovereignty or to their freedom from the king, they had to come together and form a union.
Right.
So they formed a union, but they enshrined their power, right? So they left the power in the state's hands, right? So that these minor kings and princes and plutocrats could maintain their power. And they didn't give the right to vote to the individual citizens, right? They didn't do it. They maintained it. They said that we're going to run, we're going to control who's in charge. So that's essentially sort of what still goes on. Right, that's essentially what goes on now too, because the governors of each state, and they run things, and their family run things, and it keeps the power. So we have like in Europe, they have your peasantry, and then you have your
middle class.
Your middle class.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, middle class is kind of a new thing, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of a new concept. It really wasn't much of a middle class back then, and it's not much of a middle class any place on the planet, right? So these notions of a republic and a democracy and all these things came about so these people were able to inure freedom to themselves, but it wasn't their intent to pass it out to everyone else. But anyway, I was talking about with respect to Lincoln, the 13th Amendment passed by one vote. Keep this in mind. This is very important for everyone to understand. The South wasn't there. They weren't there. They hadn't rejoined the Union. When they made the vote, North Carolina, South Carolina, they weren't there. It could not have happened. That amendment to the Constitution could not have happened.
Right. But let me. I just don't. I don't want to confuse people in the sense of believing that. There wasn't a time that Democrats, it was vice versa, put it like that. Is that what you were saying?
No, I'm not saying that either. There was never a time when either party had just liberals or just conservatives. That never happened. It's happening more so now than it ever happened before. More so, there's more. You've heard the term rhino, Republican in name only. You've heard that, right? Okay. What that is essentially conservatives in that party saying, if you're not actually a conservative, leave the party. Okay, that's sort of them purging their lines of liberals. So, but no, it was never the case. It was never the case when either party was all liberal or all conservative. There was always a mixture. And that is what bipartisanship is. It's when you reach over to someone who sees things the way that you do. Right. All right. So I say again, I really think that folk can get their head around these notions and understand history if they understand there is nothing, not a single thing that you can think of in history of any significance prior to Trump being president that only one party supported. What I'm saying is that the notion that Democrats are now what they used to be, that the people in the party see things now the way the people in the party used to see things, is beyond any kind of reason. Here's an example. Even if you don't go deep on politics, you know this. If you accept the notion that the majority of the Confederacy, matter of fact, probably all of it, were people who affiliated with the Democratic Party. How do you reconcile that the Democratic Party elected Obama?
But if people today aren't seeing that, how are they going to?
I'm asking them to see it, right? I'm saying take the glasses off, because you don't have to believe me. I'm asking them to look at what they already know.
Right.
Look at what you know. Trust what you see. I'm asking you to look at what you see. So now, someone tells you they were the Confederacy. Okay, I agree with you. They were the Confederacy. Okay? They were the KKK. I agree. Now, when someone says that to you and then tell you that they are the same people, same behaviors, and they elected Obama, you're supposed to say that doesn't make sense. I'm asking them to think.
I got you.
To think, to know that it's utter nonsense, to reconcile how could that be? I'm saying they are calling you an idiot to your face.
Right.
They're saying you're stupid.
Right.
I could say something absurd right in your face, and you won't reconcile it.
Right.
You won't think.
Right.
Or you can't think. Either you're retarded or you're just too damn stubborn to pay attention to what's in front of your face.
Right.
And then they say, hey, but that's the way I see it. And I say, I understand that. Take those glasses off and see, because those notions can't be reconciled. And here's the thing. Anything that is true can be reconciled.
Yes.
All things that are true can be reconciled. Facts one fact can't contradict another fact, and they both be true.
Right.
Something's false.
Something's up with that.
So
yes.
the notion that the Democratic Party is now, first of all, let's make this really clear. Using the ordinary definition of words, we know that neither the Republican Party or the Democratic Party literally ever did anything, period. Because parties don't do anything.
If you were liberal
Humans
conservative.
do.
Yes.
Humans do.
Yes.
Humans do things. Parties don't do anything. Parties never will. They are man-made constructs.
Yes.
They're just a construct. They're not humans. They don't vote. They don't do anything. The people in them do them.
Right.
The people are the subject. So when we say Democratic Party, what we're supposed to mean is the people in the party, not the Democratic Party.
Right.
So now we know that everybody who was in the Confederacy is dead. So we know that the Democratic Party was not, the people in the party back then are not alive today. So and we know that parties don't do anything. So when we talk about in context what the people in the party did, we know we're talking about people who are dead, who lived long ago. Right. So now when we talk about the character of those people and who they are and how they saw things, they were conservatives. Absolutely. They would have had your head if you called them a liberal.
Right.
That's just true.
Right.
That's just true. It's just theirs. It's just theirs. Because the notion of liberal has to do with liberal. What does it mean? Liberty. That's what liberal's about. It's about liberty.
And that
personal
kind of
freedom.
shows it's kind of in-house fighting, Democrat or Republican, because one thing that I've known is that as Donald Trump, as much as he lies, liberals that we see on television do a horrible job of messaging or counteracting what he says. I mean, as much as
I agree.
Donald Trump and whomever have their ways of thinking that is conservative, the liberals do a terrible job,
and have always done it.
And it seems as if, just as you say, it's about how they can ask questions, or when they're doing debates, Donald Trump will say a conservative would say something, and then a liberal wouldn't try and break it down as you would. They got 2 minutes and 30 seconds to try and do that,
right?
And so it's really like a bullshit game between the two. They're like, I'm only going to go so far. You're only going to go so far. But I think that what I want to realize is that we identify as that weak messaging with Democrats, and we identify that tough kind of with Republican.
Tough lies.
It may be.
Folk believe that they can't win without a lie because of the system that we have. I get that. However, I believe it would just be a different system if they stopped lying. Okay. It would change the system if they stopped lying. That particular person couldn't get elected without a lie. But if the country comes together and we push our elected officials to pass laws that prevent them from lying, we're going to have a country that comes together.
So why won't we do that? Why do you believe we will not pass?
Because
We're all in it.
well, I believe it's possible that we will. I believe it's possible that we will, because all the community of people who believe that they are honest, that they have integrity, that they're making their decisions based on facts. All of those people are interested in truth. Now, they may not believe things that are true. They may believe things that they've been lied to. But if they were told the truth instead of lied to, they would make a different set of decisions. I believe that. Now, then on the other hand, there are sociopaths who understand that they're being lied to, and they need that lie. It's like, I mean, we see this in our personal lives, right? We see in our personal lives that we accept things that are not true because we benefit somehow from the lie. Okay, so we pretend that we don't know, right? I mean, let's face it, men, right? Now, I know it never occurred to me that I was sexist. It never occurred to me that I was, but I was, right? Because listen, how do you say bitches? Where the bitches? Man, I got 14 bitches, right? Okay, that's sexist. It just is.
It just is. Yeah.
It just is,
For sure.
right? So it never occurred to me that I was a sexist until I had daughters. And then the first time I heard somebody say bitches when I had daughters, I was offended. You call my daughter a bitch? What?
Ain't that wild?
Right. So it never occurred to me, but I was trained to be homophobic. I was trained to be sexist.
Yep.
Right. And I accepted it without thinking about it. I just did. So if it is that I accept that I know that I have an advantage, that I can do things because I'm a man, I have rights and privileges because I'm a man, and society supports male dominance, and if I don't uphold male dominance and I can't really compete with women, I'm going to have an issue.
Big one.
I'm going to have a huge issue with women having liberties, right? I'm going to be making up shit and some more stuff, right? In order to bring back things to the old days where I could compete, because I can't compete with women now.
Yes.
Okay, and they talking back and all this other stuff that I can't deal with because I'm not really as good as them. Let's just face it. If I'm not, I may have an issue. So now if I'm that guy, I'm going to have an issue. But if I'm like, okay, listen, all right, we just going to foot race. Okay, okay, I'm just gonna have to pick up my game. Right. If I'm that guy, I may not have an issue with it.
You will not have an issue.
So it just depends on.
So is that what you're telling people to do? Kind of just stop running from.
Stop lying.
Just
stop lying.
Cut the shit out.
Cut the shit. Listen, if you stop lying, if you admit that you're weak, you're lazy, you're stupid,
you have a better chance of getting better.
You can get better. Right, you can step up your game. Yes. Right, you can pick up a book, you can read, you can think, you can learn. Right, you can update your opinion, you can update your resume, you can get out there and compete with them.
So let me ask you and give this an example. So you got kids, obviously you've been through your life. They come up to a situation that you've been through personally, just by chance. Their situation is exactly like yours. Would you tell your child the way you went through it, or would you tell them the way to get through it, basically? I mean, would you put your